Let's talk about selling art online, how to sell art on Instagram to be more precise. But first things first, let me tell you the following story. When I was younger, I played a lot of tennis, and during one of our training sessions, at the end of the training session, we are practicing serves. That happens a lot in tennis. At the end, you kind of 5 or 10 minutes some serves, and I'm young, and I want to ask the trainer to show off, like to show us some real serve, how it is done. And so I ask him, hey, can you show us your serve, your best serve? I ask him, show us your best serve. And he goes to the service line, and I'm already fantasizing about what that serve is gonna be. I'm fantasizing about something with effect that is dragging the opponent all the way out of the field. And so he goes to the service line, he prepares, he throws the ball up, bam. Hard. Serve straight right to the middle. The most basic serve that you can imagine. The most basic serve that you can imagine. And I'm kind of disappointed. Like, sure, there's power in that serve, but I'm kind of disappointed. And he walks off the field and he looks at me and he says, Dries, 99% of all matches are won with that serve. Training's over. And he goes off. And it took me a couple of years. It took me a while to realize that was probably the best lesson I could ever learn when it comes to selling art. When it comes to selling art. Because a lot of artists, especially artists, are focusing on all these fancy things. They're focusing on likes, on followers, on like posting on a regular, like all of these things that they think are gonna matter when it comes to selling their art online, when it doesn't. In the end, it's about the basics. The basics matter most. There are social media platforms where I post, and in 1 day, 2 days, I get thousands of likes. I get 1,000 comments on one post. As you can see here on these, like screenshots. And I'm not saying that to brag, although I kind of realized, and I'm to some extent bragging with that right now. Why am I showing this? Is because you should realize that I come from both positions. There was a time where I had 5 likes, and there was a time where I had 4,000, 5,000, whatever, 1,000, 10,000 likes on one post. And I can assure you that the likes, they don't matter. With what I know now, I would probably be able to sell as much back then than I can sell right now. And so those things that a lot of people are focusing on, that's just not how it goes. It boils down to the same old tried and true sales principles that were true 50 years ago, before Instagram even existed. And that will be true 50 years from now. These are, when it comes to selling art, we're talking about human interaction. We're talking about human psychology. And the truth is that human psychology will not change in the next 50 years. And it didn't change in the past 50 years. And so it doesn't really matter which platform that arises. Whether it is an exhibition, an art fair, Instagram, whatever it will be, the psychology remains the same. And so this is something that a lot of artists don't really realize. It's not about the likes. And in this video, we will be covering those tried and true principles, the basics of selling art online, the basics that will be true on any social media platform, whether it will be Alexa, whether just anything. If Instagram takes down their organic reach, you will still be able to sell art with the practices and principles in this video. First, let's talk about the direct outreach approach. This one is going to be already a complex site, so follow me on this one for a moment. When artists start thinking about selling art online, the first thing 99% of them are thinking about is why they want to sell art online. Should they sell art on Instagram? Should they sell art on Facebook instead? Should they, and why do they need to sell paintings online? Why do they, They're thinking about what they need to do in order to get that particular result. And why they want that. Perhaps they want to impress their friends because they kind of feel insecure and feel like a loser at this moment. Perhaps they want to get some satisfaction from their parents because their father has always said that art is not the thing that they need to go into, blah blah blah, whatever, like they're thinking about themselves, when the reality is that there is no buyer, no art collector who will ever buy because of you. There is no art collector who will ever buy because of you. They buy because of themselves. They buy because of their reasons, not your reasons. And so that mindset of thinking about your reasons is already fundamentally wrong. And you shouldn't really do that. And so the first thing in this approach is understanding why the art collector, the prospect, could potentially buy your work. And then we have to start thinking about their reasons and start asking questions to get to know those reasons. We don't go in and say, hey, why do you buy art? Oh, that's interesting. That's why I sell art. And bam, everything is done. That's not how it goes. And so we have to start asking questions and know where we want to go towards, because there are millions of questions out there and there are only a few that actually go towards the direction that we want to go, to get the information that we want to get, to then be able to present ourselves accordingly and sell art. Of course, there are a lot of reasons that art collectors want to buy your work. Some will want to buy it because of a connection that they feel between them and a past experience that they had, a story, that really resonates within for the last 20 years, and that work reminds them of that. Some will want to buy out of greed. Some will want to buy because they have a desire to own a particular brand, like for the same reason their wife is walking around in a Louis Vuitton bag. They want to blah, 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 blah. Some have a desire to win, People buy because they want to have a competitive market advantage, or they believe that thing that they're buying is going to help them win in whatever victory that they're after. Some buy because of a fear. Some buy because of passion, etc., etc. There are so many reasons why people would buy. Let's start off with the story one. Past experiences, stories. We know that the thing that is, from a neuroscientific point of view, you know that I like science. You know that I like to build some kind of foundation underneath the practice that I'm using. And so let's go into that. We know that we need to have as much hippocampal activity as possible, because that is a region that will be responsible for remembering the past experiences. And the more activity, the better, the more in detail the other person is going to remember that experience. And the more in detail they are going to remember it, the more specific you go, the more you get to know about their unique personality. And that is crucial. We want to know what their unique personality is, what their expertise is, what they've learned from those past experiences. And so we ask questions around that. So when they went for, a weekend to Paris, whatever, an art weekend, you can ask about it. How was it? I can imagine that because of this and this and this culture, we also did this. How did you experience this? Or what? You ask questions about their story, and the story will follow. And in that story, particular things will happen, and you want to eventually use those things, or that's a bad word, but you want to eventually ask about their unique experience and what they've learned from that. That's a very powerful, magical moment that happens when you know the story well enough in detail. You can start asking about what they've learned. What does that mean to you now? Okay, so yeah, you met this, or whatever happened. You ask what the piece of wisdom is that they got from that. Now, this is already going pretty deep in the conversation. The moment that somebody shares a personal piece of wisdom with you, and not only in theory but in practicality, how they apply that piece of wisdom, you can also ask that, yeah, hey, I've experienced something similar in that particular event. I learned this thing, but I have difficulties with applying it. And you ask that, how did you, do you have a way that you now apply that because you have this business? So I can imagine that, etc., etc., etc. And then they explain that. When they explain something that they've learned about a personal experience that they had, and they also explain you how they are applying that piece of wisdom that is very unique, That's when you build rapport. That's when you build connection. That's a crucial moment in a relationship. If somebody, like those pieces of wisdom that they're sharing there, are the things that they would include in a book if they would write a book, like those are very personal pieces of information actually. That tells something about them because that is something that they learned, and you can only learn that if you have the same experience. If that dog out of nowhere bites your leg, whatever, doesn't matter. Like if you have, I cannot come up with a story at this moment for some reason, but the point is, like, if you have, you can only learn those pieces of wisdom if you have had that experience, and you want to know that. That's where you build connection, and then you can already see that this approach will not be done by boasting consistently, Like this process, you cannot get towards this process by posting consistently on Instagram, by getting likes and followers, by focusing on that. Whatever you focus on will expand. And so if you focus on likes, you will get likes. If you focus on those things, you will be going in that path when real connection is built in a conversation. And so you have to go towards conversation. How do you do that? With direct outreach. The first process that I want to explain here, with direct outreach. By going in the DMs and actually contacting the collector that is in your list of collectors that would potentially fit your work. By actually start talking with them, and you would be surprised of how much that will come out there. I have Instagram messages dating 2-3 years ago. I can't really share them because that would probably that's pretty private, but dating 2-3 years ago, 4 years, whatever, when I had 400 followers of people actually sharing real stories, in written form. That's not a face-to-face interaction, but sharing real painful stories about themselves in written form. And you have to, you're not going to get that in the comment section underneath your post. And so if you want to go towards reach, towards marketing, towards community building, you're going to want to have as much comments underneath your post and as much likes. That's not going to build that connection out. And so this is very important to understand that those tried and true relationship building skills are essential, and you're only going to get them through that direct outreach thing. Anyway, let's go further. Desire to own. Some art collectors or some people in general have just the desire to own the best. They only want the best of the best of the best. And so these people inevitably will be thinking about, for example, Damien Hirst or like Olafur Eliasson or something like that, and so initially as an artist you think like, I'm nowhere close to those types of artists. And so which collector who has that type of drive behind their buying process will ever want to buy art from me? Dries Ketels, my artist name, is nowhere close near Damien Hirst or anything like that, but that's not the only reason, like sometimes it's the desire to own the best, sometimes it's the desire to own the most unique, the scarcest, the most whatever, like it's just the law of categorization states that it needs to be the best at some particular thing, and so you want that to be in your work, and you want to use that in whatever sales process that you have when the particular collector that you're talking to has that type of mentality. And so for example, in my work, I know that I cannot be the best artist at this moment at all, but I do know that the art that I make is very scarce. Like the paintings with lighting that I make, or the paintings with chemical reactions, those are patented methods that some people might dislike the art, some people might like it, but the point is that there are only a handful of those paintings, Like you can say, like, for example, let's compare it to oil paintings. You can say like this painting right here, or is of this particular artist, let's call him John, and there are only 100 paintings of John. That's all cool, but there are still millions of oil paintings in the world, There are still millions of oil paintings in the world. With my art, that's not the case, the only place where you can buy that particular type of painting is with me, because I've invented that painting method. And so there's nobody else in that category. And there's nobody in the world who paints with lightning. I'm the only one. There's nobody in the world who paints with chemical reactions like I do. I'm the only one. And so I can play on that scarcity thing. If you want to have paintings that are really unique, really scarce, the most unique, the most scarce, then that's an option, you know? And so a desire to own the best of something. And you should ask for that, you know? You should ask for that. You can already see it in some ways. Like if they dress up in the best of the best, and they drive the best cars, and they drive the best, like they will want to have the best of something, you know, like that type of personality. Sometimes you see it, sometimes you have to ask for it, sometimes you have to go in that interaction, but you can only know those things by asking. You can only know those things in an interaction. So what I would recommend you do is to list down all the questions that you could be asking, you know, list down all the reasons that are connected to your art. Some artists will never try to figure out if the collector is somebody that likes to own the best, because that is not their type of stuff that they're doing. But you have to know what type of art that you have and how that connects to particular personality types that buy particular things. Like, if you sell abstract art, you're not gonna have to bet on stories or past experiences, you know, like there's not really a lot of connection there, you know? And so you have to know which ones you can bet on, then write all the questions down that you could potentially ask to figure out what type of personality that art collector is. And then once you have that list of questions, the second step that I would do is to actually go out and start applying this. Now this is a hard process, you know. This takes a while. This takes several years, because after several years, you will see that some things keep on coming up. Some reasons for collectors to buy your work will keep on showing up, and then you start to realize that those types of motives are inherent in your art. And so once you know that, you know which galleries to approach, you know which collectors to really approach with some certainty and stuff like that. And so that's important, to let time go over that and to try and put that actually into practice, like in real life. The third thing that I would do, if you have difficulties with that, is to go on social media and to contact me if you need help with that. Okay? Like that's as easy. If you need help with that, if you need help with selling art online, just contact me. Here in this figuring out reason, we already see that we should use Instagram as a tool to do direct outreach, you know, as a tool to, as some kind of email address almost, where we don't try to post and build community necessarily, where we go through our list of collectors that we know is in line of our work or galleries that we want to reach, and then go towards those collectors on our list, and then reaching out to them and trying to create a conversation, and out of that conversation try to buy, instead of just posting and hoping that some art collector magically will want your work or something, you know. I could go on and on about particular motives that art collectors might have, and reasons for them to buy your work, reasons that go beyond what you want and that go into what they want. And I've mentioned a lot of them in the beginning of this video. I will probably write them down in the description, but I don't want to go on and on about that, because I also want to talk about the direct outreach approach and go a little bit more specific in that, so that after this video you can actually execute on this and improve your selling game. Because this video is about how to sell art on Instagram, and so you need to be able to sell art on Instagram afterwards, you know. And so we're gonna go a little bit more into that now. The first section of this video is already talking about building that rapport out, building that connection out, building that emotional bridge between you and the art collector. And so let's go a little bit more on that, because the truth is that people really care about themselves. People really care about themselves. A lot of people don't want to admit it, but everybody kind of cares about themselves. If there's a notification on Facebook that states that you're tagged in a particular picture, and then you click on it, and then you look at that picture, the first person you search for is you yourself. Why? Well, because you kind of care, like we know that. And so what you ideally want before you're going to approach somebody, before you're going to do that direct approach or the direct outreach towards a collector on Instagram is actually know stuff about them. You have to know stuff about them. There's this saying, I don't remember it exactly anymore, but it goes somewhat like this. True friendship is born when somebody says to the other person, "Oh, seriously? I thought I was the only one." When you feel like, whoa, he experiences the same thing, that's when friendship is born. Same goes on Instagram. That's common, the common ground between you and the art collector. You need to find that. When they like themselves, when you like yourself, and somebody is similar to you, then you will feel more connected with them. That makes a lot of sense because it's common sense. And so building a relationship out where you have that common ground and where you put that common ground on a pedestal and talk about that is going to be a good thing. Like you want that. And so what I see a lot of artists do is they will use some kind of 180 strategy, for example, to build community, to build their brand. The Gary Vaynerchuk 180 strategy. And there's nothing wrong with that strategy. If you want to do branding, if you want to do community building, that's going to be a good idea. But if you want to be selling, that is not going to be a good idea. Most artists that I know that try to use Instagram in order to sell art, nothing wrong, like nothing against them, of course, but what they will be doing is a 180 strategy, for example, and they will read one or two posts. They will read one or two posts and then they will make a comment and see that as the start of their interaction. One or two posts. You're not going to really be able to do anything in one or two posts, You will not know anything about the other person in one or two posts. What you should be doing is reading, if they have 100 posts, and you know that this particular collector, out of the art that they're posting, out of whatever research you did, that's list building, that's beyond the scope of this video. We could talk about that, but if you already know that they're in line with your work, there's nothing wrong with reading all 100 posts, okay? There's nothing wrong with that. We are trying to sell high-ticket objects here. We're not trying to build community, We could also be doing that, but this video is about selling art on Instagram. And so reading all of their posts, really figuring out everything about them that you could potentially be figuring out is a smart idea. That's a smart idea, especially if, like, a lot of artists will say, yeah, but that's so much work. Like, guess what? If you have dreams of selling your work at whatever price you want to sell it, it's gonna take work. Like there's no 40-hour week that will go towards it, or there's no 4-hour week that will go towards it. And so if you know that this particular artist, this particular art collector is connected to an art gallery that you like, in your list building approach, you made sure that is the case, and is collecting art that is in line with your work, there's a good chance that whatever you're doing in research, you will be able to use at some point. Perhaps not even in this direct outreach approach, but perhaps at some point when you visit that gallery's opening, when whatever happens, you will be able to use that. And in this approach, like actually reading, actually spending time, knowing what they like. Again, it's the same as the beginning of this video. It's about understanding what the other person, the art collector, likes, their motives, their reasons. Reading their Instagram posts matters. Their caption, they write a paragraph under their picture. You can know stuff about that, Like this actually gives a lot of information. This is not just who they are. This is information that they think is so valuable that they should share it publicly. That's how important this type of information is for them. And so you can derive a lot from this. In Dale Carnegie's cult classic sales book, I read about a president, I don't know which president anymore, but this president, what he would do 2 hours every single day was study the subject matter that the person that he would meet the next day was interested in. For example, a person he would meet, I don't know, some leader in the steel industry or whatever, and then he would read up on that industry or read about the interest that that person has. For example, that person would be interested in biology, and this president would not be interested in that at all. But he would read 2 hours to be able to talk about the things that the other person liked, not the things that he liked, even though he was already a president. And so that's a very powerful mindset, understanding that the art collector will not buy because of you, they will buy because of them. Because of their interests, their reasons. We talked about that, that because of their limbic system, the desires they have in their central part of their brain. We talked about that neuroscientific aspect of it. And so you have to go towards behaviors that focuses on what they like. Behaviors that are empathy-like. To some extent, that are built on top of empathy, and so that's going to be a very powerful thing to do. Actually, reading, and so something that you could do right now, an hour from now, after you've closed down YouTube, is, for example, take one of your sketchbooks that you didn't use yet, see that book as a book that you will use to observe. As you can already see in this approach, observing is really important. Because 50% of the communication is done through observing. So you take that book, and that book is meant to observe. So what you're going to do is you go to one of the art collectors that you kind of want to reach, that you want to, or that you think you will be selling art to, and you go to their Instagram profile and you read all of the posts and you write down how it makes you feel. Okay, so in this post they're wearing shoes, sports shoes. Okay, those are tennis shoes. Interesting. Why are they wearing tennis? Perhaps they play tennis. You write it down. Whatever you feel, whatever comes up, and you train your observation skill through that. And the more you start observing, the faster you will be able to see particular things. And see common ground. Not just when you're looking on Instagram towards profiles, but also when you're going to an art fair, when you're going to an opening, when you're going to whatever, you will not only listen, you will also see in their behaviors, their whatever, you will observe and see things that other artists don't see, in which you will find common ground, build relationships, etc., etc., etc. And so this approach is actually not only for art collectors. This approach is also good for journalists, Like I've been featured in Vice magazine and Fubis magazine, a variety of art magazines that have some importance. And this is a really good approach. Like journalists like to write about artists that are similar to them. Like a journalist that knows that some artist likes to play tennis, for example, the same example I know, and they like to play tennis, that's common ground. They will be way more likely to write about that person than that other person. This is just simply how it works. And to do that, have a book that is your observation about people that you want to reach on Instagram, etc., etc. Now, many of you, or I've heard this before, like, Dries, yeah, but that's all good. It's just that that it's a little bit stalky, like reading posts of them that they have published a year ago. I don't really know if I want to do that. And how will they feel about it? And how will, etc., etc. Like those are all excuses, those are all insecurities. Of course, it's okay. There might be some kind of taboo around it, but it makes no sense. It would be okay to read a book that somebody published, an art collector published, but it would not be okay it would not be okay to read all of their Instagram posts. That makes no sense. That makes no sense whatsoever. And so, of course, you can just read all of that and take that as a way of getting to know them. And so once we start to understand that this connection is going to be essential, that this connection is the actual currency, then we start to put some of the recommendations in perspective. For example, using the right hashtags. If you're an artist on Instagram, using the right hashtags might, during particular moments that are long gone now, by the way, that now that doesn't work anymore. During particular moments, you might do some community building. You might do some branding by doing that. But you're not going to sell art. Like as long as you're not interacting, there's not going to be a selling art game going on. And so those tactics are good, but they're for community building. They're branding, like that is social media marketing for artists. It's not selling art on Instagram, or tagging your location, tagging location to attract local customers. A lot of people recommend that. That is not a sales trick. That is not a sales tactic, especially not in the art market, because when that would be really powerful would be, for example, during a Friese Art Week or some art event in New York, Friese Art Week in London or in whatever, like these big events in big cities. That could be potentially powerful, but you're gonna have to have an engagement of 1,000 comments on your post and 10,000 likes, to be able to trend on those location hashtags in those important places during those events. You will need a lot of engagement. Those are not tactics for 99.99% of our artists out there. If you have 5,000 followers on Instagram, you cannot use that tactic. And I've tried, like when I was doing an art fair during the Friese Art Week in London a couple of years ago, I had about, 500 likes, 400, 500 to post, something like that. So I had some real engagement, and that only worked in very, very specific locations, which did not cover London at all. So those things are not going to work. Those are not client attraction methods. Some other things, for example, posting process pictures. Posting process pictures is going to matter. There's some relationship building type of thing going on there, especially if you have some communication skills. If it's not just posting a picture of your painting in process, then again, you're going for likes and community building and reach and whatever. Like, that's not what we're talking about here. But that is a very small portion of relationship building. Like what we've covered in this video is those are the basics. You have to have the basics first. As said in the beginning of this video, you need the basics first. And so all of those things are that's for another video, like process pictures and how to build relationship out of posts, and which posts that you then make and stuff like that. That's not a video, but yeah, there are some smaller things, like, for example, categorizing yourself. Instead of using your name, you could say Belgian artist Dries Ketels. Sure. That's gonna be there. There are gonna be people searching for Belgian artists in the search section of Instagram, and then if your profile is one of the bigger profiles in that category, it will come up. And so you have some search traffic going on there. That might be a good tactic, but those are all small things that you could add. Like those are all small little tactics. There are so many tactics. I have one video on Instagram bio, tricks and hacks and all of that stuff. It goes very deep into the psychology of bios as well. And I cover some of those things, but those are more branding things, social media marketing things in that video. You could check it out if you want. But those are not going to lead towards sales. It's not because you put your city or your country or your whatever in your bio on Instagram that you're going to sell or attract people through that. Those are all small additions that might help, but on themselves are pretty worthless. And so I think we have a long video here. Let's finish it up with the following thing, because you have to do in order to own. when you're starting executing what I just said in this video, that's when you will start to own the material. That's when you will start to actually get results. And so what I would do next to that book that we already covered, writing down, observing, all of that stuff, what I would do is actually go to the description. I will list all the motives of art collectors. Think about them. Think about all of those different motives and write down questions. Write down questions that you could be asking to get towards those motives, to get towards those reasons that they might be buying work. And then starting to put that into practice, And over the course of years, this is a long process. Over the course of years, you will be seeing that particular motives resonate with your work. That particular motives resonate with your work. That your work is inherently good for that particular art collector. And once you know that, which is advanced information, most of the galleries out there at this moment, they don't know that of their artists. They don't know what motives of particular collectors resonate within the work of their artists. This is high level. This is just high level. This is not beginner stuff. It's basic, but it's important. Most galleries don't know this, and so over the years you will figure that out about your own work, which is going to be a major advantage. And so that's what I would do. And then as a third step, if you still need whatever, like, just contact me, Like if you want to, if you need help with selling art on Instagram, you can always contact me. Type in my name in Google, find out which social media platform comes up that you like, click on it, write a message, and keep it simple. Hey Dries, I saw your video. I need help with selling art. Can you help me? ? Boom. That's it. That's all you need. Like that. That's all. P.S. I also think you're a really hot guy, and just want to say that thanks for the videos. That is always welcome. Just joking. But just as simple as that. I need help. Can you help me? ? Boom. That's it. And so by now you know that my name is Dries Ketels. I'm an artist, and I'm here to help you out. And perhaps you should subscribe if you want more of these types of videos. Yeah. See you later. Ciao, ciao.